Welcome back to part 3 of our COM 2113 communication and fill in the blank media culture and social influence video lecture. We are taking some questions from John and John, Thorough John, right? This could be this is a new nickname. We could use it. Has some questions about our documentary we screened in week 2. Everything or Nothing documentary behind the scenes of the James Bond franchise, its incarnation, as we use the spy text this short course semester to better understand the rhythms of media culture and how it creates mass persuasive appeal, right? Being the author of the James Bond franchise, Ian Fleming basically wrote about his own dreams. I might call them fantasies. Is this form of narrative what has kept the viewers of these films interested? The fantasy narrative, if you will, John? For some, yes. This goes to pull right back to Stuart Hall's encoding decoding model. It can mean many things to many people. And that's a key takeaway for this week. That's a key takeaway for the week 2 readings in this course. And so that fantasy element of Bond is among one of many options that appeal to people, okay? And, so you have variation there. Would the writings of the James Bond books and creations of the films be classified in the dominant hegemonic position? Based on our assignment 2 from week 2 and your responses as a class, where we asked you to create 2 columns looking at society's way of viewing certain themes versus the way the world is framed according to the Bond canon, at least from the documentary perspective. I would say overwhelmingly you all agree that yes, these books and films could be classified according to their dominant hegemonic meaning. But yet we've also seen those alter over time because, Bond wasn't always held up to the mirror that way, right? You see a lot of critique and criticism for that character, for that film, and especially for some of the vintage films. And I don't think we're done critiquing and having our say with those texts, as we'll see shortly in the class. So I'm very excited. We've sort of opened the door here, and now we're getting into that realm of possibility as we move closer to not only the midterm, but then eventually our final in the course. In part 2 of the documentary, the segment shifts from the characters to the producers. Does the creativity of the producers have the same amount of influence on the audience viewer as the characters? Yes. The creators, the producers, they have a lot of influence as well. But oftentimes it is the sort of silent or invisible influence. We're just not aware. This is one of the fun things about maybe studying film and film history is if you get to know certain names and certain people within the industry and certain institutional relationships, certain production practices, then it teaches you more about the internal workings and the politics, the class politics, the gender politics, okay, the racial politics, the sexual politics that go on behind the scenes in order to negotiate and ultimately co-create a piece of mass media, right, or mass entertainment. And so, those you don't think about those factors as the casual audience member, right? It's all about kick back in my chair in the theater, nom, 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 or at home or wherever, and let me just enjoy the text. Let me just kind of lose myself in the fantasy narrative. But when we learn how to read the text along the both its internal and external layers, both its overt and covert meanings, then it's adding value because we're learning how to do other kinds of work, right? It's not just about the text anymore. It's not about the spy genre. It's about what we can do with the skills, with the tools we pick up as we study something like a single genre or a single medium as we do in some classes, right? That's exciting, because then it's teaching us how to acquire transferable skill sets we can use in the workplace, we can use in business, we can use at home, right? We can use in these various settings. And that's important, right? And that's fulfilling the tenets of a liberal arts degree. It's giving these mass transferable skill sets to us to be able to use later. That's exciting. Where does the Bond franchise fit in the millennial generation? Come on, millennials. Is this all these millennial questions? Are these directed at me? Is this an accusation? Not answering that question. Is it outdated due to newer, more up-to-date spy films? Perhaps John's talking about the Bourne series, of which he's exploring in some of his writings. Not a single answer. Once again. Absolutely, they shift over time, just as the actors have changed hands, right? We've seen many incarnations. They're often looking for ways to both repeat the form and reboot or reinvent the form. And so we saw this again after the success of the Bourne franchise in a sort of decline of Bond in popularity. Toward the end of the Pierce Brosnan run, in the early mid 2000s, they took a larger than average break between films, and of course, simultaneously, United Artists was going bankrupt, having some problems there financially, and but they took their time and they adjusted some aspects, and they brought the hyper realism back down to something closer to at least dramatic realism when they brought Daniel Craig on board, the latest James Bond incarnation, and that sort of stripped down, grim and gritty approach, particularly in Casino Royale, was a kind of reboot of the character, as well as an homage to its earlier years of production, and at the same time it was a response to contemporary tastes like the Bourne Identity franchise. And one irony is that they actually, by the second outing with Craig, A Quantum of Solace, took it too far in terms of like a kind of hyper masculine, or I guess it's always hyper masculine in a way, but a force-fed action film in that second outing for Craig, and it just didn't quite work with critics or really audiences either, and so they had to strike a balance moving forward, something that I'm sure that will never cease. They're never going to find the right balance and then keep it, because every new film is an opportunity to reinvent what they're doing. But there's still interest there, right? There's still interest there, and it's a valuable commodity. And I think the tension that they face now is between exploiting it, right? So continuing it. How do we continue, but also preserve or reserve the brand? Because we're seeing a lot of these things like we're having we're not just making Transformers movies, we're going to have a whole Transformers universe of films, right? We don't have a screenwriter writing for us, we have a writer's room. And because we're doing that with all the things like Star Wars and Marvel and Marvel Star Wars. How close are we to the Marvel Star Wars crossover, right? Since I want to see the CGI, Goofy show up in that instance, right? Where's he at? Okay. Let's see some questions from Simone. Burgers, Media, and Society. What do you think is a reasonable daily time frame for people to use their time on media? I'm biased. I don't. Whatever I say, it's. Uh, who knows? I I'll assign that reading when it comes out. Right here is the exact amount of time you should be on media. I know we're supposed to take breaks. I know they'll tell you when you purchase something, like, don't run it all day. Kind of let it cool down after a while. That's more of a liability, they say. What effect has media had on your life, my life, and your relationships? Melodrama here, with people you love. The L word. Let me say this. The media we use in our lives, I mean, it can bring people together as much as it can drive them apart, like anything. Because ultimately, isn't it about what is our internal motive and uses, right? I mean, we can develop friendships and relationships by going to media events together, go to the movies with friends, or on dates or what have you. But there can be that unhealthy degree of consumption as well, and the same at home. Okay. So that's tricky. There is that saying, and some of you know it well, and others new to the class already know it. The medium is the message, right? From Marshall McLuhan, and I've got one for us. It is this is my medium is the message. I've just come up with this. What is the motive behind the usage? All right. So what is the motive behind our usage? I think that's an important question. We should ask what need is it fulfilling, and who is it fulfilling those needs for? Good stuff. From the reading Media and Society, how do you think people are influenced when being overexposed to media? No, there's not one category we can apply to everyone. That's a slippery answer, but it's a slippery way of thinking about media, to make it sound kind of neat, right? And I think that's part of the problem. One of the reasons we wrestle with our mass media fixations. It can hurt our head to think about it. So let's just turn on some media and forget. No.